talking, I thought you were saying this on the email, oh, so he, we really have to see him to set up. I'm sorry? We really have to see him to set up.
Journal entry in our software, and when I F12 and exit, it's supposed to print, and it wouldn't print, and then when I opened my printer icon, it kept saying printing, and then it'd say, error, restarting, and I finally had to cancel it. But,
So
and then the next item, the next item then
Oh.
printed, so I think I'm okay.
Right.
I had them done at Iowa
Just a little
Information.
bug in your ear in case I start running into problems.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We have money in there for yellow ambulance. Or red. You got to pick. One or the other.
General obligation.
We'll choose for you.
General obligation. Quarterly, that's pretty much everything. No, we just bond. It's just a type of bond. We issue the bond.
Wayne, how are you?
I'm good. Sam, how are you?
So, yeah, it's not from tips, it has to be just a general obligation. Most of our bonds are general obligation.
Is that a for sure deal? Is that a done deal? The Quetzy by the Bears, yeah. Yeah.
So where do we get that money? The budget. Well, we pay it back already. Is there interest that they pay back on it? Do they pay interest on that?
Have you?
We pay interest on that, yes.
There you go.
Or, we pay them interest. Somebody buys.
I like your optimism.
He told me that about we pay them interest.
So what's the Wi-Fi gap we were figuring? I think we should know that.
Or with a capital O, 1, 2 exclamation point.
Exclamation point, you dummy.
These are our general obligation bonds.
Did our IT guy forget?
Something about cowboys.
Look at Tim showing here.
Are we live?
Good, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is 4:30. I'd like to get this started so we can get out of here on time. At this time, I would like to ask that you stand and for a moment of silence, and we'll follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I heard there was a heat on fire over at the old...
All right, if we could have roll call, please.
Tom Hager,
Here.
Wayne
Here.
Barahona,
Here.
Steve Hamill,
Here.
Ken Snyder,
Here.
Brad Hint.
Will he be joining us? I'm assuming that the fire is
so. I think-
detained by him going to the fire call?
Yeah, he about ran me over in the way in.
Okay. All right, next item is approval of the agenda. I'll take a motion for that.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Hamill,
Aye.
Barahona,
Aye.
Eggers,
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
All right. Next item is our public forum. Is there anyone wishing to speak to anything on the agenda or our discussion regarding the budget today? You know, your department heads, you'll have your chance later as your committee comes up,
Just
but
have to not now what I'm...
anyone else? We do have one comment from the, that was turned in by Marvin Reeson. I will read that as soon as here we go. Marv's comments today, this came in at 3:10 p.m. this afternoon. The sales tax needs to be completely reviewed and should keep half of that aside. He doesn't think insurance or labor should be coming out of that. Doesn't think another Pavilion employee is necessary, and he doesn't understand how the new FTE would work. Okay, full-time employee would work. What does an enforcement person know about ambulance? Those are his comments. We'll enter those into the record. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? If not, item 4 is a review of the mayor or council goals. Are you going to do any, you want to do anything with that, or?
You don't have to, they're just in your binders and they're linked, so you're welcome to.
That was 2019 was our last goal-setting session. I'm going to take a little liberty right now. On Thursday of last week, we had our SCDC luncheon. Tom Kraus was the speaker. Tom has submitted several stories to Chicken Soup for the Soul series books. He goes around now as a motivational speaker. Some of you were there, I know, and I have to say he's probably one of the best speakers I've heard at not just at the luncheon, but at any. I really, really enjoyed him. And I've been thinking about what he had to say, the stories he was telling, and here's where this little blank card comes into play right now. I'm going to read a story that he wrote about his senior year of high school. And he told the story the other day, so for some of you it's a repeat, but I think it bears repeating. My junior year, something special happened. It was in an algebra class during the spring of the year. Football season was over. We had done well last season, qualifying for the playoffs for the first time in school history. I wanted us to do even better next year, my senior year. Then the idea hit me. I was so excited I didn't even wait until after school. During my lunch break, I drove over to a print shop and ordered business cards with a simple, direct prophecy. Boonville Pirates, 1974 state champions. That's what was printed on the cards. When the cards were printed, my teammates and I distributed them all over town. Teachers pinned them to classroom bulletin boards. Merchants taped them in store windows. Pretty soon those cards were everywhere. We wanted our goal to be right in front of us for all to see, impossible to overlook no matter where we went. Our school had never won a state title in any sport. We were determined to change that history. When football practice started in late August, we were focused. From day one, we gave more in practice, paid more attention to detail as we executed assignments sharply. With our goal imprinted in our minds and hearts, Boonville Pirates 1974 state champions, we marched through the season undefeated and stepped into the playoffs with a sense of destiny. The first playoff game matched us against a powerhouse team that was riding a 28-game winning streak. We knew we were in for a fight, but as the intensity of the game increased, so did our determination. We won, pulling away in the second half. That win brought us to the brink of our goal, a matchup with the defending state champions for the title. We went into preparing for the big game with the same intensity and focus we had shown as a team all season. Then it started to snow. A huge winter storm blew through the area. School was canceled, roads were closed, transportation system shut down. Still, somehow every member of the team made it to the school gym and we practiced for the biggest games of our lives in tennis shoes. Then, because of the severe weather, our coach received a phone call telling us that state officials were thinking of canceling the game and declaring co-champions. We were asked if we would accept such a decision. No way, was our response. We believed this was our year. That night, my father came to me sadly and announced that he would not be able to attend the game. He drove a bread truck. He had to deliver bread to the stores. The game was over a 3-hour drive away from his route. He vowed to listen to every play on his transistor radio. Consumed with anticipation of the game, I acknowledged his comments without fully noticing his regret. The next day, as game time approached, I couldn't help but think about my dad. As we arrived at the stadium, we found the field buried in snow. The goalpost stuck out about above 6 to 8 inches of snow. Someone asked if snowshoes would be allowed as legal equipment. Undaunted, we dressed for the game and began our warm-ups. Frustration grew as both teams struggled to a scoreless first half. Slip, slide, fall down, dropped pass, missed blocks, fumbles were all either team had accomplished. There was a growing sense of urgency that time was running out on our dream. In the locker room at halftime, Coach Reagan reminded us that all we had been through to get to this moment. Then he reached in his pocket and he pulled out the card. "Do you want this?" he said. That's all he needed to say. As I lined up for the second half kickoff, I happened to look up and noticed a blue and white bread truck pulled in the parking lot. Dad had delivered the bread and driven over 3 hours to see the second half of the game. We scored 34 points in the second half on the same field we couldn't score on in the first half. Our year-long dream became a reality, and to this day, I still have my card. He pulled it out of his billfold. It was well worn, but he had that card. Boonville Pirates, state champions, 1974. He goes on to talk some more about his dad. I'm just going to stop there. But that's where the card comes in. We've got a blank card, but for the next 2 days, I want you to think about this blank card, and as we go through this budget process, begin to think, how do we be the equivalent of a state champion? We can do the ordinary. We can pass the budget. How do we take it to the extraordinary level is my question. So as we work through these next 2 days, think about this card and think hopefully at the end of that second day, we'll be able to write something that inspires us to work through this coming year to make Sheldon an even better place than it is. We've got a lot of things going. There's a lot of opportunities in this budget for enhancing and improving the quality of service we're offering to our community. And so with that, consider that your motivation as we go through these talks, because it can be mundane going through all these figures and facts, and it gets a little daunting at times how we're going to do this, but I think we've got a good budget here, and I think the discussion today will help us to make that even better one. So that's the reason for the blank card. So let's move on then. Any more comments on the goals that anybody wants to make? All right, then we'll move into our department presentations. Ambulance, Kristen, you're up. State your name for the record.
Kristen Hahn, EMS Coordinator and Director for the ambulance. Wasn't so sure I wanted to go first, but I guess here I am. So I gave you guys all the memos and the budgets. So I'm just going to highlight on the highs of the budget. So for the regular budget, one of the biggest increases you'll see is the wages for the ambulance personnel. This is to add a full-time employee that is a shared employee with the City of Sheldon and a SCAT member, doing code, zoning enforcement, and being an EMT on the team. I would like to answer Marv's question. I am unsure what a code and zoning enforcement person knows about ambulance, but what did I know when I started? Very minimum, and it's good to grow. We don't know who's out there to take this position, but we're willing to look. So going off of the wages, so we currently have 2 part-times and 1 full-time. Both part-times, we currently have 2 grants that I applied for and was awarded last year from O'Brien County funding those 2 part-times. I intend to apply for those as well this next year. For the rest of the regular budget, there's some decreases, there's some increases throughout the rest of the budget. Moving on into the CIP, the biggest ask in the CIP is our new ambulance to replace our 2012, which has 145,000 miles. This was approved through the USDA grant last year. Then the next on the item on the agenda would be the upgrade for our LifePak 15, which has been in service since 2016, was manufactured in 2015. Recommended manufacturer replacement is every 6 years, so we're at that 6-year mark. So then that is the highlights of our budget, so I will open it up to you guys for any questions you guys have. Quick, easy, to the point. Now you get the drill.
One question that I had,
Yep.
Kristen. Right now with the 2 part-times and with looking ahead to hire a full-time, which is actually going to be a half-time ambulance,
Yep.
would you still retain both of the part-time employees and the half-time plus the full-time?
Yes.
So
Yes.
in fact, we would have 2 full-time positions at the end of the day. A half
Correct,
plus a
but
quarter of the
ones
board.
that-
Or, well,
I'm
the
already the
part-time, I'm not
full-time.
sure if the part-times are quarter now, or how that is, but, so anyway, you would be one plus the half, and then whatever those two part-timers add up to.
Yes.
Okay.
What kind of role will the new part-time person play as far as day-to-day operations and that sort of thing?
Responding to calls. Their main focus, when me and Sam have talked, is gonna be, you know, upstairs, making sure the code and zoning, and then wearing the pager on the hip and responding when I have them scheduled to respond to ambulance calls.
And how has your staffing been as far as the volunteer force and general ability to respond to calls in a timely fashion and that sort of thing?
Good. We always can use more, because, you know, there's always holes in the schedule. Right now, we have 24 members, 3 plus 3 from the fire department, so that's 27 members. 14 EMTs, 5 medics, 3 drivers, and then 5 are students.
How does that compare to 10, 15 years ago? Is it down in terms of volunteers,
No,
team-wise?
it's
been about the
really
same?
been a kind of consistent 20, 25 members, yes.
So the other side of the coin, how does that, in number of calls compared to that same time frame? How many calls-wise now versus then?
Now, we're over 700 calls. 10 years ago, we were at 415.
So the workload is considerably more. That answers that question for anybody that may be asking.
And do you guys have like a system in place as far as advancing some of the younger, maybe less seasoned members into becoming EMTs? And are you seeing a response to that? It seems like that the EMT level we might be at a lack of. Is that right?
Yes, and that's, you know, we do have a program where SCAT sends them for EMT, and then the O'Brien County reimburses SCAT once they are an EMT. So we do have that program, and so does the school, where we will send them at the high school level to become an EMT. But yes, the lack of EMTs throughout everywhere that's just today's world.
Do you have people on your force right now that are engaged in that schooling?
Yes, we have 5 students, yep,
Oh, okay.
yep.
Can we go back? Who's doing the jobs now that this new employee will be doing? I mean, who's covering that now? Or is that area being covered at all?
Currently, well, there's no code zoning enforcement person, so that's gonna be their main focus with responding to ambulance calls. Who's doing that? It would be myself and the rest of the team is responding to those calls, and it would help lessen the burden for some of our volunteers leaving work or whatever it may be that they're doing.
Yes.
So, and to add to what Kristen said, also want to point out that this is more than just enforcement. This is the processing of our zoning permits, our building permits, the fence permits, the deck permits, the shed permits, helping to prepare for Board of Adjustment items. I would still be involved, especially at the Board of Adjustment level and the Planning Commission level, but customer service is really important. And then when you have someone that comes in and they have a fence permit, or they like some information on building something, that can take a great deal of time, and they're often in a hurry. And just from a bandwidth standpoint, if you look at it's not linked to this agenda, but it was linked to a few agendas ago. If you look at the number of zoning permits that we've had, it's hard to keep up. But the ebbs and flows are such that it's hard to justify a full-time employee just on zoning and code enforcement, except at certain times. So that's when Chris and I got to talking, and putting someone down at the end of the hallway with a pager who can be an EMT and fly down the stairs, to help out on a call, I think would be really good for the process. So that's what we're looking at. Now, have been working on an idea of convening some type of a committee to help vet some of the requests that are and the needs of all 4 of our emergency services branches. And that's something that I'll be discussing with you more in depth after the budget process, but this is something that we can vet further in that process.
Sam, do you have like a pay structure in mind for how the pay would be with the split duties, and knowing that, you know, ambulance people can go on transfers, that stuff can get very lengthy, could be, you know, several hours in a given day, so how does that break down? Or do you have an idea yet?
Yeah, we're working through that, Wayne, and what we have as a placeholder in the budget is $50,000, but, you know, that would include, you know, probably some of the benefits as well. We're trying to sort out, I mean, you and I have talked about whether this would be a salary or a hourly person. It sounds like we're leaning towards hourly, correct? So we'd have to work that out. Likely, this person wouldn't be going on long transfers,
Not all the time, no.
right? So.
Okay.
And then there would be some overlap with the schedule. Maybe not complete overlap, but there would be, we're looking at probably a swing shift or something like that, but it wouldn't necessarily be swing all the time, but we're working through that. We've already, we've got 3 people working on the job description, so Todd and I and Kristen are working on it, and I think this person would report to Todd and Kristen, because what we don't want to do is create another department head position. Should be under Public Works and SCAT.
So, that $50,000 placeholder, you say that's part of the benefits, but maybe not the whole thing, or how are you thinking on that?
Maybe we levy for the benefits.
Okay.
So if I remember, it was, Andrew, was 24 cents. Does that sound right? Was the impact on the levy? And then I think the initial wage that we discussed was in the $16 an hour range. And then we'd keep a close eye on overtime, but the position would be eligible for overtime, correct? Yep. They wouldn't be an officer.
No.
And wouldn't be eligible to become an officer. They would be a full-time employee.
Okay, thank you.
So what did the grants from O'Brien County amount to this year?
Each one were $15,000.
Each one was 15,000.
Yep, so we got a total of $30,000.
And would that still support part-time employment for the next budget as well?
They have it in their budget for next year as well, yes.
Okay.
And, you know, when I talked to Jared, he thought it would be approved through their budget as well.
But you would still be using part-time as well then on top of the full-time?
Yep, so we'd have me as the full-time, the 2 part-time, and then this extra,
So the grant money would still probably,
yes, still go towards our full-time, yes.
and part-time or however you want to.
Yes, our
divide it. So-
part-time, yes.
Yeah.
So we're looking at
Staff.
30,000 if we're able to get the grants. Okay.
Yes, and I think they've requested an extra 5 on each, so I think it's actually 20,000 each, but
Okay, so maybe as much as 40.
All right. Any other questions for Kristen? Or comments?
Yeah, I do, in regards to the new ambulance. When we come down to the 2012 that we own today, what are the deficiencies of the 2012 at
it's
this point?
high mileage. It's just, you know, usually they try to replace 120,000 miles. They just get outdated.
Is the body in good shape yet and has all the amenities that you need? Or?
Yeah, yes, and we would get some sort of trade-in value when we talk to the companies we go through for the ambulance.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is, you know, there are communities around us that look at putting new chassis underneath the bodies. Company up in Rock Rapids actually does that. Have we looked at that as an option?
We have looked at that as an option, yes, and we usually work with Aero in Rock Rapids, so we weigh all of the options when we
Okay.
look at them.
So are you requesting brand new chassis and body, or?
You're requesting, yeah.
Okay.
That's what we put in with, for the USDA grant.
So what kind of savings was there through Arrow if you went with a refurb?
I can't really answer that for a guarantee, because we just started our committee,
Okay.
so that all of that process will be starting after this budget.
Okay.
So then-
Account for that.
Well, you
Sam.
said that there's a grant portion of this. Give us the outline of that. Like, what are we looking at as far as dollar amount and timeline in comparison to how it falls within our budget year?
Sam? So the USDA grant was approved last year for us. We had the $220,000 put in for the grant with the USD for an ambulance for the next budget. We looked at it for last year's budget, but we pushed it back to this year, just because financially it worked better in this year's next budget. As far as the timeline for the USDA grant, when we've done our grants, the last grant I did with the emergency response vehicle is I have to get 3 quotes from 3 different companies.
You have to follow the whole USDA
Yes,
approved
their
regimen of,
whole
yeah.
timeline.
Okay.
Yep, and they give me the okays when I can do, when they approve it.
And that USDA grant, what, will that cover the whole cost, or will that be partial cost, or what are we looking at for that?
It was I'll have to find out for you. There was a whole list of things that USDA covered, and some of it was at 35%, and some of it was at a higher percentage.
Okay.
This is still a significant investment for local taxpayers.
Okay, so it's something that we will have to weigh. Okay.
And the other thing we're doing, if I might, is that we're working to alleviate the strain on the ambulance transfer fund, or the ambulance depreciation fund as it's called, by funding more of the fire and police expenses out of local option sales tax, which you will see later on in the agenda. But it's important to know that even in doing that, the general fund is still heavily supporting SCAT. So, but not as much as before. So I think that this budget represents an improvement on that, and that's something that we would be discussing further if we have a committee or task force.
Okay.
I miss anything?
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, Kristen. One thing I failed to mention earlier before Kristen started, and not because you went over, but in your presentations, those of you department heads.
Wasn't my fault.
No, I'm not pointing any fingers here. It's just, if anything, I'm pointing at myself.
Pointed several, yes.
Your presentation, we're going to try and hold that to 4 minutes. So, and then the question and answer time, that's not included in that, but as you're presenting, limit your comments to 4 minutes, please, those of you that are coming up. So Tricia, you're next, if you would.
We joked about this, about who would take the longest. You have our proposals before you, our memos, so just 3 things I'll point out. The Pavilion Rent, we have increased by $17,500 for fiscal year 22-23. My memo might have said that incorrectly. Excuse me. Not 17.5, I have the wrong amount. My apologies. Anyway, we are increasing our rent, but not as high as the percentage is what we predict. We're being a little conservative. Based on the current fiscal year where we're at, where we were last year, current bookings that we have into the next fiscal year, it shows that we are going to be much further, but we're going to be conservative in our income, in our revenues. With increased pavilion rent, obviously our expenses will increase slightly. The biggest change that we would like to propose is adding a regular part-time person that is definitely needed before any full-time people burn out. And that, I think, is something we can put right into our budget currently now. It's just going to be the way, we have to be savvy with scheduling the part-time staff we have now and making sure that when they are on schedule, it is in times of busyness and need. The third thing I'd like to point out is our capital improvement is we would like to ask 25,000 in our, to build on some kind of storage unit. And these are funds that we could use from our civic tax levy. 1, 2, 3 points. Any questions?
You have 20,000 here.
Yeah,
You
well,
said 25, so I want to make sure I
yeah,
have the right number.
it would be 25, and I needed to
25.
correct that to 25. Yes, thanks, Ange.
So the addition
Oh,
of,
I thought I was gonna get away with no questions.
sorry.
I'm ready to wrap it up. It's
Just-
okay.
It's a
Hi,
real
Tom.
simple one.
Yeah, yes.
In regards to the added employee, are you needing just more bodies and not more time? You just need to divide the time up between more bodies, or
No, we need another body.
you need more, add
Yes.
the actual
So
part-time
the
on
biggest,
top of it?
the biggest constraint that we have right now is working, when we have events, a manager is always on duty. So when you have a wedding events, let's just focus on that. You're there 7:30
Right.
minimum in the morning until it could be 2 o'clock in the morning. We try to split those up. When we have back-to-back and sometimes back-to-back-to-back, we can easily get almost our whole week's worth of work, get our work in on that weekend. We're closed on Mondays, but sometimes we take events then too. What Haley and I are finding is when we come into work on a Tuesday, we're already behind schedule of what needs to happen that current week for the time going forward.
Mhm.
If we continue to grow the way we are, we need someone to help us keep up. The other thing that we've taken on is we're doing our own billing now. That was something that came out of the city office, just to help relieve some of the constraints that, it put on the city office gals. We're now taking on our own billing with our events. And so what we're looking at is taking a couple, 2, 3 things away from Haley, maybe myself, just to alleviate some of the pressure so that we can focus. We're a high-end facility and we need to stay that way. And if we're going to continue to grow, we do not want to slack in our services.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? The storage facility you're talking about, are you thinking like a separate storage shed?
I'm not sure what it would look like, but it would be separate. It wouldn't be an add-on to the building, but something that's very easy accessible off the building without
Not
having...
remodeling some existing floor
No,
space in
no,
the
not taking...
facility.
Yes, it would be something that, in my eyes, it would be something that would be to the south and east, immediately off that catered drive area.
Okay.
So, part of the problem is things we have in the storage rooms now, we're busting at the seams, and we're putting things in storage that shouldn't be used for storage.
And it would be
And
cold storage, I assume.
It would be
correct?
cold storage, And then some of our goods take on damage because we're trying to squeeze in so much, 90 pounds of stuff in a 10-pound box. Just doesn't work. So if we start to bring on new equipment or replenish, we just need a storage to take on that stress, a storage unit, building, something. Nothing fancy, cold, a light would be nice.
I guess when you say nothing fancy, we are fancy.
We are.
We're gonna have to find that balance, just,
Sure, so, and I'm no design engineer, whatever, but my thoughts are if you have some kind of storage, the faux walls that we have out front now that mask our HVAC systems on the front or on the east, some kind of brick wall structure like that would easily hide that on that end as well.
Okay.
So, brick, that may be a bigger expense, I don't know, I think a concrete pad might too, but we really don't know what it's gonna cost, we just shot in the dark and we're gonna start shopping around, and I think we'll really take one of our board members up on things that he likes to do. Bill Bosco John, he loves to come up with drawings and see what we need and put it into perspective.
okay.
You might need a variance from the Board of Adjustment.
I think we just might have to ask, pretty please. So, okay.
Anyone else?
So what you're anticipating, this employee, in your dream or whatever, that the increase in business that you get will be paid by...
Absolutely.
I mean, that's,
Absolutely.
I
So
just
if
want
we,
to make sure, yeah.
right, so we had 190 booked events, and I think I went over, I don't know if I went over this with you all. But we ended up in the calendar year last year, we had 190 booked events. 183 came through. 7 had to cancel or whatever for some odd reason. That is more and more and more each year that we've been open, obviously, and we're already way ahead for this next calendar year with our weekend events. And just when we think that we can have a little bit of time to catch up, the corporate events are filling up just as fast. So I foresee this year being even more than what we had last year. So with that, with the Pavilion Rent, I do see that revenue coming in to help cover that part-time regular employee's expense.
Since I don't know how this was set up, I'm still learning.
Come visit me?
And so how does this, we give them money, but then does that income that they make come back to our general fund? Is that how that works, or is that they keep it, and if they have an increase, how to?
Their income is received into the general fund, into their department.
Into their department, okay.
And that employee would be expended from that department as well.
Okay, okay, all right. I'll think on it. That's pretty good, thanks.
We can have coffee someday.
I will.
Trish, one more thing. You're fine. I would be curious to see if there is a metric that you could come up with, you talk about the history of the pavilion and how those numbers of booked events go, of what capacity is for number of employees, as far as the number of events held in a year and what is sustainable with what level of staffing.
Sure.
I would just the thought just kind of struck me that, if we're showing trends, so is there something that we can do as far as trying to, be able to forecast a little bit? We're still young. I mean,
Right.
we're only 5 years old, but.
So I'm not tech savvy, you are, right? So if that's something you and I, if you ever have the time to sit down, I can tell you what it takes to run one event, whether it's a corporate or a wedding, because
Sure.
they are a little bit different.
Sure.
What it takes beforehand to execute and afterwards, et cetera. We could put that in to get a better
Yeah. we
realistic
could
number.
probably-
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
Thank
Thank you, Tricia. I don't see anybody here from is anybody here from EMA? I don't think so.
I'll be speaking on
You
behalf
will be.
of
Okay, yeah,
EMA.
you. All right, you're up next.
Do I go up to make this official?
You can sit there.
Wayne Barahona, Sheldon EMA. Our numbers, our budget numbers are basically the same. We're looking at a little bit of raise as far as pay, just because just like everything else, we're having a hard time trying to get employees, trying to get volunteers. We are currently, as it stands, we are down 4 members from full. So with the basis of how our organization works, there is no forecasting. It could be respond to 1 call a month, could be 3 in a week. So what we try and do is to make sure that we have the best level of staffing possible, especially when it comes to covering daytime calls. So we're going to try and incentivize that just a little bit, and we're also going through some staffing changes, and so we'll be here in the next couple of weeks announcing a new director, new deputy director, and there'll be a little bit of a change over that way. But as far as the budget goes, numbers aren't real different, just a little bit added to the line item for wages, but history does also show that we've not spent as much as we've budgeted for, so we try to be good stewards of that.
All right, any questions for Wayne regarding EMA, emergency management?
Come on, Ken.
I appreciate the good steward part.
Hey, you betcha.
Hearing none?
Not easy, I mean.
Thank you, Wayne. Brad, are you going to present anything regarding the fire?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have you go to the podium as practice is coming.
I guess that was good timing.
Yeah.
Got back right in time.
I was gonna slide you down to the bottom of the list, then I saw
Yeah.
you walk in, so.
Our budget's pretty straightforward this year. Minor increases with wages because lately, the way our calls have been going, we've been steadily on the incline. We have some capital improvement stuff. We added some carpeting, some pagers. Carpeting last year, we did some concrete work, so we just left the same number in the line item. Same way with pagers, we did pagers again because they're a little over, I think, a little over $500 for a pager, and they're on guys' hips, and they get abused. They last maybe 2-3 years. Other than that, just general cost of goods and services. Contract labor has gone up quite a bit. Our capital improvement plan has been about the same for the last couple years. We have an ongoing $17,000 we're asking for fire gear. Because with all the toxins in the smoke and the fire, we have a fire, guys wash their gear immediately. Like this afternoon, we had a vehicle fire. So those 6 guys took their gear off and they automatically wash it. They have an extra set of their old gear, so now they're still in service. If we didn't have an extra sets, they'd have to wait until it's dry. We have mobile data tablets that are going bad. We need to replace those. Dress uniforms, the department used to buy them, and we're just putting that in our budget. We need to replace some office chairs. The other thing we've had in our capital improvement over the last several years has been an addition to the station. We'd like to talk about that a little bit more and maybe get a committee together and earmark some money if we need to have some services beyond our capabilities to look at those needs. And then the other thing is, down the road, we need to start looking at going from a per call rate to an hourly rate for our members. They're going through the EMT, the Firefighter 1 program. It's 130 hours by the time you're through it. And we're running into some problems where employees, firefighters have to take time off without pay. Some get paid for an hour, some get paid the whole time. So we just need to try to help them out so they can be reimbursed for the time. Especially highlighted when we went to Sibley to the train derailment, and we spent 8 hours up there. If that would happen in Sheldon, same railroad line, their department was up there almost 72 hours. It's all billable time, but we need to start looking at that down the road in the next couple years to switch that over. Ambulance has been switched over a number of years, so we need to look at that. So that's about it for the fire department's budget. If anybody has any questions.
Brad, how's our agreements with the townships? Have we gotten those all ironed out now?
Work in progress. It's been a work in progress. We've come a long ways in the last several years, but we're making ground, and it's work in progress. So,
Question,
yes.
Brad, what's driving the need for more space?
Just, for example, storage, meeting place where we can do training. If you take your gear apart, where do we store our extra gear? Where do we dry it at? And then, if we're starting to look downrange long-term, putting our thinking caps on out into the future, it's just, you know, we'd like to have somewhere where we could take a truck in and wash it. We pull trucks out in order to wash hose. This afternoon we came back from a call. We had probably 500 feet of hose to wash, so you have to pull trucks out to wash the hose to clean it. So it's different things like that. We'd like a little bit more space, so instead of having all the records out on the floor, we could put some of that stuff in an office. Not everybody needs to know some of that stuff. So just some different things like that, and, you know, looking into the future.
Do you have like an idea of what, like something drawn up as far
No.
as you're just
Nope.
more looking at
We're
the
just-
process? And
We threw it out to the officers of the fire department to kind of have a brainstorming session coming up and coming up with ideas where we could go. Sometimes when we have a large fire, we have hose laying on the floor to dry. It's a trip hazard, so different things like that.
So Brad, would that extra space be needed whether or not we, in the future, with another location?
It's all part of that. I mean, it's something that we're gonna look at.
Because you note that you're going to study about other locations
Yes.
and stuff like
Yep.
that. I take it what you're talking about here is within that study as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. And our current station is, I think it's close to 25 years old. So,
With the facility that you've taken over with the old wastewater plant, how's that working out?
it works out fine. We do a lot of training down there. But when you come back and you want to have a business meeting, you want to have that at the fire station where you have all your records and your books and that, because you don't want to haul back and forth between places. And right now, we have a meeting on the apparatus floor. Everybody grabs a folding chair and have a meeting.
Which to me would be a reason not to have a second location. I mean, initially, a second location on the east end of town or whatever the case would be response time, but in answer to that, or in response to that, then having it all under one roof would be still probably preferred.
Maybe, you know,
determined.
we really haven't started to look into it. It could be that location, it could be build a new fire station somewhere else, it could be doing whatever, we don't know. We haven't even looked at it. This is the first that we've made it public, that we are looking at different ideas.
Okay.
So it's very grassroots. We've just basically started tilling the dirt.
All right.
So,
Anyone else? Thank you, Brad. Library, you're up. Who's going to be presenting today? Cole and Micah. Caleb. Micah's
Nicole Weber, Sheldon Public Library Director.
I'm Caleb Screws, I'm the Board Vice President.
I don't have a lot to go over. You've seen my memo. Some of the things that you can just see shortly that we've done this year is expanded our hours. We are open Monday nights until 8, as well as Tuesday through Friday until 6. The extra hour in the evening was added for families who want to come after work or individuals who want to come after work. And we haven't added anybody. What we were able to do was do some creative scheduling with our assistant director in order to have that extra hour covered in the evening. Along with those evening programs, you can see that we've been expanding family programs on evenings and Saturdays. And most recently, we're working with local libraries and NCC to promote additional adult programming. When we're looking at our budget, one of the things, obviously being open more hours, is going to allow us to circulate more books. We are asking for a small raise in the number of, in the amount of money for the books because of the increase in books, the demand. And then also, some of you are familiar with our bridges. I know Pete likes that. We also spend money on electronic books out of that budget. I think those are the highest areas. Also, with being in, open increased hours, we will have additional charges for gas and electricity. Those should be, when we looked at them, we were looking at what the increases are predicted to be for next year. to make sure that we have that covered. The last thing I'll talk about is just the building maintenance. We are asking for the $14,500 for this year. $4,500 of that will be for a new garage door. It's the original garage door that has been on the library since 1969. And as you know, we have the EMA services and they're storing their trucks. So we did put a new remote on it, but we do want to make sure that that is functionable, obviously in case of emergency. And then the other thing we were looking at is I did have Todd kind of come around and take a look at the building. We're asking for $10,000 in building repairs for caulking, tuck pointing, painting, just a lot of repair and maintenance to keep the building up. I think I talked about expanded hours and expanded services, so Caleb was going to just speak real quickly about wages.
Got about a minute and a half left of your 4.
What's up?
Got about a minute and a half left.
Oh,
of
I
your
can,
4.
perfect. With expanded hours, expanded services, of course, and looking at the rate of raise across the board for city hourly employees as well as director heads, what we're looking at going into for the next fiscal year is for all of our part-timers coming in at a 6% increase. This has been previously discussed, and we find it to be an equitable solution, but also for our director is going to remain at the 275 mark, which will be right in line with the rest of the city department heads, and our pages to $9 an hour, which is right around a 3% bump. And with the pages, it's hourly employees only in the summers, and that sticks in line a lot with like what Wayne's talking about with some of his hourlies, Trish with hers, and of course with the rec department lifeguards getting a bit of a bump there too. It's our goal to remain competitive and in line with, especially looking across the city and all the city hourly employees, and to maintain something akin to how the rates look across the board for all those departments.
All right.
Do you have specific questions?
Yes, any questions for either one of them?
Do you see the cooperation with NCC and that program developing further?
Yes, we just started that collaboration with them, and it's a lot of synergy rather than dollars being moved around with each other. So what we're doing is we have just started meeting together to plan a different adult programming. One thing we are able to do is I'm planning a couple of different speakers, one coming up in April and one coming up already next September. And what we're able to do is share expenses with those other libraries so that the same speaker can come to different libraries and speak on different topics. So I'm expecting to have a lot more adult programming coming up through those collaborations. And I know that's something when I go out into the community and present to different area clubs, that is something that has been requested, is more adult programming. With our budget right now, I am having to take some of that money out of the children's programming, as well as asking money for the foundation in order to provide for those programs.
Anyone else? Nicole, you had mentioned the extended evening hours. I'm not sure if that in terms of more people coming, but are you seeing people take advantage of those hours?
We are seeing people take advantage of those hours, and we actually have a door counter coming in that will be able to help us determine when the highest number of people are coming on, at what hours, to help us a little bit with scheduling as well. We are limited in the number of people that we have there, and we also want to make sure that no staff is in the building by themselves. So that kind of is hard a little bit with our hours, but we are seeing a lot of very happy parents bringing in their children and whatnot during that 5 to 6 p.m.
I want to commend you for making that possible. That's what it's here for. And if it's just normal work hours, it's hard for people to get there. So
it is, right.
Kudos to you guys for doing that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Moving on then to our police. I assume that's going to be you, Scott?
Scott Birch with the Police Department. The two things that I'm going to guess you'll probably have questions at that'll kind of stick out to you would be the increases in wages. As you know, we got the COPS grant this year, so we hired an 8th officer. I just kind of want to let you know where that puts us in relation to the 25 cities that are closest to us. They average about 1.68 officers per 1,000 residents. This 8th officer puts us at 1.45. So we're kind of still a little bit under the curve, but just in case people complain to you, why do we need to add more police officers? That's one of the reasons we did it. So I kind of want to prepare everybody too, though, for the increase in wages that'll cause. Of course, that grant pays $125,000 over the 3 years, so our burden will obviously increase after that. And then the other thing that I kind of want to touch on is the capital improvements. We have 2 vehicles on there. That's kind of changed a little bit. It's a little misleading right now. It is very hard to get vehicles right now. So they're not taking bids for taking orders for Tahoes anymore, taking orders for Ford F-150s. The Dodge Durangos are on the bubbles. They'll quit taking orders for those pretty soon. They do the state bids, I think, in October, and those were closed within 2 months. So my thought is that we would try to replace the 2017 Explorer as soon as possible. They're looking at 26 weeks for a Ram pickup. So that would put us probably in August if we move forward with that. And then the K-9 unit will need to be replaced at some point, and we would probably order a Tahoe for that, and that would be as soon as we could order it, which would be October. If we got something then, or got an order in, I don't know how long it would take, but it would put us towards, I would say at least probably April of '23. So it's kind of misleading that I'm asking for 2 cars because it might take a while to get those 2 cars. That's the 2 big items.
Any questions?
Am I, yes. Chief, you're asking for 2 replacements at this point?
Yes, yes. Yeah, like I said, I kind of started out one way, and just because the vehicles are hard to get right now. We're thinking long-term.
So Scott, looking at the wages, you're roughly 8% increase here. When it was budgeted last year, was that with or without the 8th officer?
If I remember right, it was without, correct?
I think we included it.
Did we?
Yeah, we included the 8th officer.
Okay.
We also adjusted, though, to 12-hour shifts.
Right.
Which added to our costs.
Right.
And the promotion of the 2 sergeants.
So the wage increase would be across the same number of officers then, basically?
Right.
Are you looking at the $125,000 to offset that then? with the
Yes.
grant?
If I remember right, I think that does they do a certain percentage every year and it steps down, if I remember right.
Does it offset it then, Angie?
In the first year, I believe it offsets it, like 100%, and I think it declines.
Okay.
And you also don't anticipate, did I interrupt you?
No.
You don't anticipate asking for a 9th officer then anytime soon?
I don't see that happen anytime soon at all, probably the next 5 years, I would say. Not unless something drastically changes. It's pretty hard to fill 8 spots.
You mentioned, talked about the K-9 vehicle. How's the K-9 program working out? How's the dog doing?
Great. We put out a flyer, and I can't remember if Sam has a number. I can't remember how many deployments we had, but he's been on quite a few calls, so he's working out very well. Also, too, part of that, looking at another vehicle to replace that one is I put in a grant for the equipment for that. It'd be nice if we get it. I can't guarantee it, but, that's another reason, too. We're kind of looking at doing it is if I get the equipment paid for, which would be $15,000 to $20,000. So it's a little bit more expensive to outfit a canine unit.
Anyone else? Questions for the police? Thank you, Scott. SCDC. Oh, no, wait, hold on. You got the, yeah, I think you're right. I see you moving there. I gotta look at my agenda here. I'm just going by the reports in my book here. Yes, Regional Airport. Rob, you're up. I'm sorry.
Okay, good afternoon. Rob Dixon, representing the Sheldon Airport Commission. We continue to be busy and work hard at developing and maintaining our significant asset out there in the Sheldon Municipal Airport. Sam has helped us recently here with some good work in getting the airport committed and involved in the Urban Renewal Fund source, and indeed that will help us going forward as we look to fund local matches of projects ongoing, and each year we are looking to take advantage of the grants that are available to us through the FAA and through the state, which provide 80 to 90% funding for eligible projects. And indeed, as I say, we are always looking to take advantage of that. Most recently, and up first here currently, is an improvement in our fuel farm out there, which was in need of repair, showing its age and in some ways unusable, particularly working with hoses in the wintertime and so on and so forth. If you have the capital improvement plan, and as part of your information there, you can see that that is forthcoming here in the coming year, and will be ongoing here in 2022-23. And following that, other necessary and important projects that are recommended by the FAA and their criteria for a safe and efficient airport operation. Our budget is very little change, increases slightly over prior years due to just the ongoing increase in some costs and repairs, but for the most part is pretty stable year to year, and we have been pretty successful in staying within that budget year to year. Your memo here, prepared by yours truly, I guess, alludes to the activity ongoing out there, and which is significant, and the great job done by Lyle and Carrie Bust and their staff as FBO and operating and maintaining the airport. And as you can see, activity related to medical needs of our community and the area are a significant part of the activity ongoing out there. But overall, our airport is a significant asset and a major factor in economic development generally for the community, and a significant factor in the attraction of business to our community. Rob,
you are at 4 minutes, so if you could wrap it up here for us. Your highlights, wrap it up.
Okay, time flies when
Yes,
you're
it does.
having fun. Well, that's a sufficient synopsis, probably. Question?
Are you seeing the activity at our airfield staying strong? I know we have a new competitor over in Sioux County. Has that had any effect, or have we been able to?
Our activity remains pretty stable, and our hangars, you know, the occupancy of our hangars, stable, and most generally, we're fully occupied out there. We had a couple of vacancies as of this report, but our occupancy in those hangars is stable, and Lyle and Carrie stay busy, and to this point, we've not seen any negative effects of significance from the Sioux County Airport. We compete well in terms of hangar rents with them, and which is a significant factor in that regard. And Lyle and Carrie and their mechanic Chad stay busy, and so far so good.
Rob, you brought up hangar rent, and I know when we talked last year, there was talk of increasing that number. Has that been accomplished this year?
It has. Hangar rents, effective January 1, went up a flat $5 across the board per month. And, you know, our base hangar rents range from, well, I believe our lowest is 65, up to 135, and some of the larger, newer ones. And so that $5 is more significant on the lower end than the top end, but $5 per hangar per month, effective January 1, and which we feel still keeps us competitive with other area airports, which is, of course, a factor. And so, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions for airport? All right, Rob, thank you for
Thank you.
your presentation today. Kurt, now you're up.
I was going to cede you my time if you wanted my 4 minutes. Is that allowable, Mayor?
No.
Can't do that here?
No,
All right.
that's-
All right. I was going to try. But good evening. Kurt Strouth, Sheldon Chamber Development Corporation. A couple of things. First of all, our memo hasn't changed since last year. It's the same. So we're requesting $45,000 that would go towards the annual SCDC operations budget, which kind of goes into our whole operation. And then number 2 would be for the storefront program that we continue to own and operate through the Sheldon Chamber Development Corporation, which, you know, currently is $20,000 a year. Comes through TIF, and through its program longevity, you know, that investment has gone in to create over $1.6 million in building enhancements throughout the community within our TIF district, which, think about ROI, return on that investment, it's pretty significant. So it helps the integrity of the building, the storefronts downtown and across the community. So we're requesting that same amount in 2022-23. So wanted to also say on behalf of the Sheldon Chamber Development Corporation Board of Directors, they want to make sure I pass this along to you guys. Thank you. Collaboration has been great over the number of years. We want to continue that hand in glove. Things have been going really well. I think we need to brag about it a little bit, and I think hopefully we can do that through this budget workshop here today and tomorrow. Census growth, obviously, is something to hang our hat on. I think we're going to talk about the levy here in a little bit, on how that continues to improve, and I think we need to continue bragging about that as well. We've done a lot of good things over the last number of years. So with that, we don't have any changes. Thank you for your support. Any questions you guys may have for me, happy to answer those.
Can we write 10% growth in the next decade?
Hey, we're on a good momentum. Yep, well, that's a good one. It's your card. You can do whatever you want, right, Mayor?
That's right. Yeah, you betcha.
Anything's attainable.
I thought the recap of the year going back to the luncheon last Thursday was very encouraging, and has me excited about what we've got lying ahead of us in the future. There are some things in the hopper that aren't really public yet, but moving forward on those, I think, again, I appreciate very much the relationship that the city and the SEDC enjoy as well. It's been a very productive partnership through the years.
Well, appreciate that. We certainly don't take it for granted, and the big message last week, Thursday, too, was the power of positivity, and we mean that. I mean, I think it's so easy to get hung up on the negative things, one or two little small things that a little nugget that may, like, just hinder and be in that person's back pocket. But I think as a community, as a council, I know on our board of directors, we challenge ourselves to let's take pride in the good things that are going on, because there are a lot of them, and want to continue to be progressive and move forward. We need to champion those things. I think everybody needs to do that. And we want to make sure we put our best foot forward in doing that. So thank you, Mayor, for that comment. We don't take it for granted. So,
Kurt, what do you think is your biggest challenge as far as the SCDC goes currently?
Yeah, so as we're kind of doing our year, now we're new year, calendar year for us. I mean, we're meeting with a lot of our businesses, large employers especially. Workforce is a major challenge right now, and just, you talk to the Rosabooms and the maintainers, they could hire anywhere from 50 to 100 employees today if they could, if the people were there. That's number one. Number two is the housing to accommodate that workforce. I mean, it's one thing to be able to have the job openings, but we need things within our community to attract them to want to move here. Housing is the number one thing. But number two, as we talked about in our annual meeting on Thursday, was when I graduated college, it was find a job. And you didn't know what community that was going to be. We landed in Rock Valley. We had no intentions of moving to Rock Valley, Iowa, after graduating Augustana University in Sioux Falls. It just happened to be where we had an opportunity to start. Emily got a job. Now as we're graduating, these college graduates are coming out. They have the liberty to move wherever the heck they want to, because there's so many jobs available. So as communities now, especially in the rural setting, you need to set your communities up for those young individuals to want to move and start the families, have the jobs, but you need the housing. You need the amenities, you need the quality of life. I mean, those are the things that we need to continue to focus on as we're moving forward. So that's the biggest challenge, workforce, housing, continue to be that. So those are the big hurdles. Probably no surprise to you.
Anyone else?
Good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Kurt. Moving on to Public Works, I assume that's going to be you, Ted? Yes.
Yeah, you're stuck with me for the next 28 minutes.
No,
You
only
get
got
4.
minutes.
I get 4 for 7 departments, awesome.
Fast.
All right, we'll start off with cemetery. Operating-wise, essentially no changes. You see in the memo, we're requesting $30,000 for lost for some continued improvements out there. Same as we did last year. That's all I have for cemetery. Any questions?
25 or 30?
30,000, 25 for the road improvements and
Oh,
5,000 for
okay.
stone.
There you go. Got
Yep.
it. We'll reset the clock. Go ahead.
Park. I should retain that time in case it's needed. Park. Essentially no operating changes there either. This summer will be year 2 of our contract mowing. Year 1 we would say was a success. I think the big thing to take out of lost looking into next year is the Park and Recreation Board has challenged myself and Jake Kerr to come up with a staffing plan so that we can improve our parks. We believe there's more we can do to make our parks better than what they currently are, but it's simply going to take people. It's going to take time. So Jake and I have been bouncing ideas off of each other on how we could improve staffing, whether it's more part-time or a full-time or some combination thereof. So next year you will have a recommendation, likely some sort of recommendation from the Park and Rec Committee to improve staffing at parks. Other than that, their request for the 1% hotel motel and lost at 30,000 stays the same. Questions?
No. I do have one question here. When
Sure,
you're talking
Tom.
about beginning discussions about improving our parks, I'm taking your looking at that as from an amenity perspective or just upgrading normal maintenance?
Amenity is part of it. Maintenance, upkeep, and the little things that people notice is the bigger part of it. And that was one of the goals of the contract mowing, was to get that off our plate, so I had to manage, or we had to manage less part-time team members and turn some more others loose that were, I guess I'll say, more responsible and on task and getting the little things done. And it's helped. I believe it's helped, but we're not there yet. Our parks could look better than what they do, and so we're looking for ways to improve upon, whether it be amenities and just maintenance, both.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Especially if we add any more. Okay, rec and pool, we combine them together. Jake gave you a report on the pool numbers a while back, and you've seen his stuff, so I'll leave that there. Really no changes there as well. I think the big ticket item, and I'm just going to jump to it, is the Park and Rec Board would like us to look into installing a splash pad. They would like that pad, if installed, to be within the fences of the pool. We ran some preliminary numbers on what something like that could cost. It's like anything, it really depends upon what you bolt to the cement. But for a starting high-end estimate, we have $450,000. In this budget, between conversations between Sam and myself and Ange, we didn't see $450 as a extremely realistic number, so we did budget $75,000 out of loss to get a start. So I think that is something that you as a group will need to consider, whether you want to leave in, remove, or increase. So we'll be open to those discussions at a later time. Any other questions for Rec and Pool? Yes.
Do most of the concepts involving a splash pad, there's no staffing really, aren't they self-sufficient as far as staffing?
Yeah, it depends upon where you put them, right? So you can put them in a place where people come in, they poke a button, they run for X amount of time, and then they turn off. The conversation that the Park and Rec Board had, though, is that while we wouldn't necessarily need staff for the splash pad, they believe it should be added at the pool, so it's an additional amenity to the pool. Something that our membership payers get extra. So if they've got the little kid and the older kids, there's something for all of them. Is their thought process behind that. Yeah. But there is maintenance, obviously. There's pumps, there's water, and there's two kinds of splash pads. There's a kind that you just turn on and the water shoots up and runs down the drain and runs away, and then there's the kind that cost more to build, that are more efficient, which you recycle that water and turn back in. This cost estimate that's proposed would be a recycle, because I can't see just shooting it in the air and letting it run down the drain. That seems like insanity. Anything else for Rec and Pool? Streets, road use tax. The road use tax budget, I would say, was a bit of a struggle, to put it lightly. They're not sitting as good as what we'd like. We ended up cutting, as you see in the memo, $100,000 out of Lyle's proposal on what he would like to do for improvements, and got creative to replace some of that. We replaced some of that by combining some leftover project funds from years ago, and that's how we plan to support about $189,000 in patching, asphalt overlay, chip sealing, and crack sealing. The other thing that is set aside is approximately $400,000 in TIF to do potential street improvements once the urban renewal plan would be updated to allow so. Beyond that, you'll still see the other things we're funding: some storm sewer work, a fuel island, updating the stoplight there by the park, those type things. That controller has some issues. It's time for an update. So other than that, I think the memo kind of speaks for itself. Big things we need to plan for: Western Avenue. As you recall, we got the grant a couple years ago, the $748,000 for that. That's a $2.4 million project. that's a 24, 25 project that'll need to be supported in some other manner besides the grant. Questions?
Todd, how does that work? You said you used money from years past leftover projects. How does that work?
So, let's say you financed an addition at Skemper, Floyd, Crossroads, whatever, and when you're all said and done, there's $30,000 left in the pot. In the past, we have left those there, and then some improvement comes up in that specific area, then you maybe utilize it for that area. Instead of doing that, we combine those funds and are saying we're going to put them to use now. So instead of on a whole bunch of little bits of money, we combined them, made it enough money to where it's substantial, and then tried to put it towards a project.
Yeah. So I guess from a bookkeeping standpoint, Ange, maybe this is a question for you, but like when there's a project like this, or like what Todd's talking about, the funds that are allocated, are they physically moved to a separate account and then sit within there, or are those dollars just earmarked indefinitely for whatever the ask is from the budget line item for that particular project?
So what you'll see as we go through this is, for Todd's situations, we've actually budgeted for those projects to come out of a specific capital fund that had some leftover funds. There's several others that we are transferring from certain funds into other funds for Todd to use, whether it's water, wastewater. We had a sewer upgrade project that was a capital project that was sitting with maybe less than $10,000. We're just moving that to sewer. We don't need that capital fund anymore. Sam wanted to kind of consolidate some of the funds that we really aren't expending anything out of. The only thing that maybe goes into a couple of them is a lot sale, something like that. So we'll create a different capital fund for those such things. Yep.
Just trying to utilize cash that we have.
Anybody else?
Okay.
On to water.
Water. All departments, and I haven't said this for any, but all departments saw some slight increases in operating for the same reasons that everybody else discussed, so I'm not going to dwell on those. The big things in water, right? We have a tower project coming up. I've been talking about this project for years. It's time it happens. So that's an estimated $3.538 million project. I hope that number doesn't get much worse. We'll just leave it at that. Anyway, so that we are proposing that project to be bid in fall of '22. We have it proposed to be covered through ARPA funds and a bond supported by TIF revenues. We will need to contribute just about $102,000 to our expansion that we committed to. We are proposing that we transfer in $250,000 from Lost to support future expansion expenditures. There's a couple ways to look at this. We are collecting, right now, we are collecting dollars on your surcharge, the Lewis and Clark surcharge on every bill. That brings in revenue. The way I have it calculated, that will cover our expansion costs for a number of years, like until 2028. That is a moving target because, as I said at the last council meeting, we got the ARPA funds that brings our cost down. That could happen again if South Dakota approves some level of the $44 million that we requested from them. Anyways, the surcharge itself is not going to cover all the expansion costs unless we increase the surcharge. Brainstorming with Sam, Ange, whatever, whoever else, this is something we came up with. It's a start. It'll extend that period and reduce our odds of bonding for the expansion. We are looking at transferring in $420,000 to cover what I hope will cover our connection
to Lewis and Clark. As you know, that's slated to either happen in late &23 or early 2024. I've said before, and I don't know if this number is going to hold true, that I expect around a $300,000 cost for that equipment upgrade and other connections. We're in the process right now of working with DGR to figure out what that real number will be. I hope to have that sometime either late winter, early spring. So looking at that, we will follow, or we propose to follow the rate study, which is a 9.5% increase. Please remember that's a variable rate as proposed by DGR. You all went through the process, so we should remember that. I think I'll stand for questions from there.
So the transfer from loss, the $250,000, is that essentially seed money for that, for the expansion, just in general?
Yeah, so there's about, and help me with a number in case I'm off. There's about $390,000 in what's that? Currently in the surcharge account that's been collected, okay? That $250 would essentially be added into that account. And it wouldn't be, it can't be a one-time contribution. If you recall, our expansion is estimated to cost us $5 million over the next number of years. So we're just looking to build that balance up to pay cash as long as we can and reduce the odds that we have to bond and further increase our water rates.
So in your mind's eye, this is going to be something annual that will be budgeting in from lost?
We either have to continue to do that, or we need to figure out another funding source, which is likely a rate increase. So certainly open to conversation on that. This is a suggestion from us as staff.
Gotcha.
So it's just basically buying the surcharge down for a year, right? The surcharge produces about $120,000 a year.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's going into that count, as you recall, we're selling water to Clay Rural Water System in South Dakota. That's currently bringing in around just call it $25,000 a year. So that 145, 150-ish is currently what's going into that account.
That $5 million you had mentioned, is that before or after the 450-odd thousand coming from the funding that Governor just signed into?
The $5 million, I think it's 5.2 is what is in the expansion commitment agreement. That's before the 12 million and before whatever we get from South Dakota. What I don't know, Greg, is what inflation is going to do to that number. I have some real concerns about the influx of money and the availability of products and the reduced good that some of that money may actually do because of the combination of both, but I can't answer that today.
Any more questions?
Sewer.
Let's move into wastewater.
We're still learning when it comes to the operations of the sewer plant. That plant has, only been up and running now for a couple of years, so we're getting smarter every year. So there are a few more operational increases, some up, some down, just as we better learn how to operate. Also, a few changes in some of our capital stuff, minor, but one of them I'll mention would be like our UV bulbs. Our UV bulbs are used for disinfection before we discharge to the Floyd River. And, we're getting a better handle of how long those run. Those suckers are expensive, so we want to use them for as long as we can, but once they lose their efficiencies, then that puts us at danger, so we got to be careful there. So there's a request in for them along with some other minor things. We are also requesting to do a study utilizing some TIF funds to study the south side sewer collection system, which would be piping and lift stations. As you know, we're currently in the process of completing the exact same thing for the east and north, and I want to do the same thing on the south end. That helps us as we plan and hopefully grow into the future, as Kurt referenced, that we know what other expenditures may be needed if certain things happen in certain areas. So
requesting that, and we are proposing a 4% increase. We don't currently have a rate study completed for wastewater. As soon as the existing water one is about to expire, then I'd like to do a combined rate study again that would be proposed. In the meantime, we're just watching our cash balances, expecting some increases of products, and that's why we're proposing a 4% increase to just keep things headed in the right direction. Questions? Yes, sir.
As we put that water tower up and look at putting water out east, do we have adequate wastewater infrastructure out there, or is that also going to go along with that?
So, no, there'll be a ton of infrastructure that's needed if you ever want to do anything out there. Yeah.
That's part of the reason for the south. Looking at the south pump and all that too, right?
Right, so if you think about where the new water tower is going to go, right, intersection of Country Club Road and 16th Street, there's kind of a break in our system there. You really have a couple of options. You could take some of that stuff with pumping, and you could go north with it, send it up to Highway 18 around the north end of town, and then back around to the south or the west side of town. Or you could run it down the hill to Washington Avenue, and then turn around and repump it back up the hill, catch some gravity by South 8th, and then let it gravity down to Kent Feed, Sudbick, and then turn around and repump it up the hill again to the top of Western, and then let it gravity down. So it could go either way there is what I'm trying to get at. And what we need to get a handle on as we potentially look at growth is which way could it go and what costs will be associated with that. And for us to do that, I need to understand where our existing system sits in available capacity. So that's what the 40,000 is for. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Well, under 28 minutes.
Our goal is to be done by 6:30 and also be in there around item 6E, 6F. Ange, do you want to give your report? I'd like to finish the reports and then take maybe just a 3-4 minute break. Somebody needs to use the bathroom or to grab a snack. Are you going to give a presentation?
No.
Okay.
My presentation is in the meat of it.
All right. So then I'm going to yield the floor to you. Do you have anything you want to report at this time?
I do not.
All right. So the 6 o'clock whistle just went. I've got the timer set for 4 minutes. If you want to take a little bathroom break, whatever you need, grab a snack out of the kitchenette back here, and we'll meet back here in 4 minutes.
Don't tempt him.
There's oranges and bananas.
That extra percent, I got money out of that at the beginning, because I worked, asked me to do something for the ambulance. I think that when that first year came into effect. Oh, okay. But you know what? I've lost money now. It's been too long. That's what did you do?
Second call, just a full thread.
Yeah, cotton concrete.
And,
Oh, yeah, you look down there.
so, we've got the new budget.
Could have had the
line
little
item
water
here.
to start.
Then, like, the ask was 631. Feel good? Back to 100% or not?
It's just I don't
We
have
know
a
what,
And now
how we
this
get that
afternoon
number
when I was
versus
outside
that
in
number.
the cold weather, I just
How I get
really
it?
lost it. Yeah, at that car fire. Other than that, I feel fine. The last day for this, so that should be good.
I guess it only does it.
Well, I haven't been that good, but I haven't been, I've been staying my distance.
Sure.
I mean, I was doing good, just in my throat.
2.5% or 2.75%.
And then,
That's their increase.
yeah,
that's
this
their
afternoon
increase.
being out in that cold weather.
So then it, total did Sam?
Thanks for you guys coming by and
That's
dumping
the
a little sand on the highway.
Yeah.
That includes their overtime.
Yeah, so we're done for it.
Sure. You did? Okay.
I can't answer for Jackie, get that number.
Gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to wages, I
were
just
they
start
bottom?
doing my worksheet.
Yeah.
And I tell
She
them
couldn't have parked it in a worse spot. What's that?
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was hot.
Oh, that was just in the beginning. They got worse.
Did it?
Yeah. Yeah. This afternoon.
That'll,
That co-op.
make you pucker over.
Yeah. I was, it was completely gone. Out of college. Fire alarm.
Actually, I put 25 in here. So you must have, something else I must have had. Maybe it was from in here. Maybe when we talked about it in here, you put 25. I didn't look at your memo. So it's over, I'm done with it. I've got 25 in the budget.
Rob?
Yeah, once we get through revenue.
Ice maker working?
In a half hour.
Good deal. Good deal.
I think if you just come tomorrow night, when they get to the discussion on everything, you'll be fine. You're so jealous of that gal. Oh, there it is.
Don't mind me. Kinda got a mind its own, it looks like.
Between the two in the last minute or?
Your alarm's going off. Greg, alarm's going off. Set the timer and then you walk away and ignore it. Oh, okay. I don't know, we'll have to talk about it. Sorry.
I said that was somebody's phone. I didn't hear it. I heard the beep. I'm still on the top bowl. All right, everyone, if we could have you gather again, we'll get started here.
They'll give you an hour. Sure.
I don't know what you do to it.
I just let it sit there.
Mm-hmm, that's what they all say. Or it's,
Do I
my
have 4
favorite is
minutes?
well, it's just his cell phone broke on the nightstand overnight, I didn't do nothing.
There you go.
I could try to do 4 minutes.
You're like the queen of the house.
Yeah.
We use to you.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah.
I think you try rebooting it.
All right, Ange is itching to get started here, so I'm going to turn the floor over to her, and you can lead us in our next discussion.
All right, so starting with your bonding capacity, you see there that we paid off the event center, which helps a lot. It lowered that a little bit. You go down below and you see what our total available bonding capacity is, which is $10,400,000, and the different reserves and amount available after those reserves. And then there's some supporting documents in there from Sam and from Scott Stevenson on some different debts. Sam, do you want anything there? You want to touch on anything there? Okay.
I think Scott's going to be here tomorrow, so we can finish bonding up tomorrow.
Okay. Any questions on bonding? All right, our levy. As you can see, we actually are down at 14.99961 compared to 15.01845. So our employee benefits, we lowered. We are going to tap into a little bit of reserves that we have in the self-insurance fund. Our debt levy has gone up because we took on the $1 million aerial truck debt service payment. So that explains that. The other ones are all the same. Questions on the levy? All right, revenues. Okay, on the first page here, you'll see the police federal grant. That's the reimbursement from USDA for our police officer that we got, and that's in year 1. Moving down here to the fire contracts, that $41,424. I plugged that in. It's our current year revenue that we have because Sam and Brad are still working with fire townships. I'm hoping that that will increase when that is all said and done. Ambulance charges are up a little bit. Garbage collection fees, we discussed it as part of the garbage contract. The city is going to try to increase our fee by 10 cents for all of our billing work that we do. Okay, on to page 2. This is rec and cemetery. Not a lot has changed here. I increased the sale of cemetery lots because we increased the price on them. Moving on to page 3. This is the pavilion's budget. They submitted that to me. Fireworks, we've got reimbursement for Kurt's wage there. Otherwise I did lower the community building rent. We're just not seeing near as much rent. Most of them are actually going to the pavilion anymore. On to page 4, you can see our property taxes increased by over $200,000. That's nice. It's due to the release of TIF and our valuations being up. Let's see, franchise TV, that is lower. That we haven't seen the big numbers on that recently. Towards the bottom of the page, reimbursements. Sam asked me to plan on our reimbursement for the rec bowl property to go into there just to help the general fund. Any questions on general revenues? Okay. Going on to library. Library on page 5, they did request $131,000 in property taxes, but we reduced that to $127,500 because it just helps the general fund a little bit better, and they have their own levy. And their capital projects aren't quite as big this year. Let's see, that's all library revenues there. I think Nicole kind of hit on that. So on page 6, airport. The airport is sitting with a very healthy cash balance. So we actually elected not to contribute property tax to them next fiscal year. And they are still going to be able to cash flow several different capital items that they had wished for in their budget. And I'll show those in the expenditures. Park, not a lot different, just a few increases on some different things. Again, the 1% hotel motel and the 30,000 from loss that Todd talked about. Museum, no change in their revenues. On to page 8. You got the DARE fund there. General equipment reserve, we don't plan on any money coming in there. Then you've got the ambulance depreciation there, their revenues. Okay, cemetery perpetual care, that's 5,000, that's coming from lost. Then we've got the fire protection capital, that is kind of new. It's maybe the second year we're in this, and now all the fire service charges and their lift assists and things like that are going into this capital fund to help with their capital needs in the future. Okay, on to hotel motel tax. So things really seem like they're bouncing back, so we've been able to budget a little bit more from the hotel motel tax there. Rec Trail. This is not one of their major fundraising years, so some of their revenues look a little bit down. And they got a grant in this current fiscal year too, so that kind of alters, or it's deceiving. Road use tax. Road use tax, we're planning $695,000. All right, any questions thus far? Okay. Road use depreciation, that's a transfer in from road use to cover some of their capital items. Then we have the employee benefits. The bottom one there is a reimbursement to reimburse for our police officer USDA grants benefits. Then you've got your emergency, which is up $5,000. Again, very nice. Seizure fund, we never know. That's a guess. Our local option sales tax, because of the population increase and the way things are going, we've increased that to $950,000. TIF went from 3.5 million to 3.7 million. Then moving on to 13, TIF LHAP, that is actually going to be a transfer in from LMI. That's another capital project that we really haven't been using. Then we've got the LMI, we've got Aquatic Center. Moving on to page 14, that FEMA, we'll be getting our second payment of the ARPA money there. Then you've got your debt service, which is a transfer in from TIF to pay for the debt principal and interest payments. Event Center Capital, that should be done. They've received enough money to zero out their construction project. Then you got the Crossroads Pavilion Capital Fund. Their transfer in, that is the Civic Center tax that we levy for. Okay, questions? Moving on to page 16. These are, again, are capital projects that we aren't really using. The 2017 capital project, that is where we're generating interest. That is Crossroads North Phase 2. And let's see. On to 17. Aquatic Center transfer in, that's another leftover fund. And then we've got B&D coming in from Lost. Street Improvement Capital Fund. Not much other than interest there. Okay. On to water. Like Todd said, we're increasing water sales 9.5% on average. Transfer in is from some other capital projects that we talked about. And okay, then on page 19 is where we have the water improvement Lewis and Clark funds. The water sales are from the clay rural water. The surcharge is what we talked about, what Todd talked about, that's already being billed to people, that right now it goes towards our debt payment, but in 22-23 it'll just go into this fund to help build the balance. And then there's that transfer in from other capital projects to help with that fund. Water depreciation, that's where they pay for their capital projects fund, so that's just a transfer in from water operations. Water deposits, that's another fund that we are actually going to go away with. That money will all be transferred into water operations, and then deposit refunds will be paid from water operations. Then you've got your sewer, like Todd said, a 4% increase. And sewer reserve, Northside sewer, then you got your sewer depreciation. Your sewer sinking is where your debt payment's going to come from. Self-insurance fund, transfer in, that is the levy for the HSA contribution, and cafeteria is just in and out. Total revenue that we're proposing is $17 million. Questions?
So some of these changes you've made are somewhat part of the consolidation that you and Sam have been working through?
Correct.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to get rid of some of these other funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Sam, this, for you, so this 17 million, how are we sitting as far as our bank goes and with their preference for cash balance and that sort of thing?
A lot better.
Yeah.
You know what our current cash balance is? Off the top of your head?
No. I can look.
It's pretty good. I received good feedback recently.
Good.
The other, while we're waiting here, the other thing I'd like to mention is to fast forward to what you'll hear tomorrow night, cover a little bit of that. Originally, we looked at a $4.1 million note for the water tower, and we're now looking at a $3.1 million note. And not doing, because part of that $4.1 million would be to do more streets out of that bond. And Todd and I, for a couple of reasons, we decided one is just bandwidth. We have so many projects going on right now, plus Rainbow Drive happening soon and a few others, and wrap up from previous years. Adding more streets to the mix, especially when we want to do, we decided to shift our focus a bit to do more chip seals, mills and overlays, crack seals, and repairs, which is easier to manage that kind of work than it is a big reconstruction project. But Rainbow Drive, for example, will be very intense because the way it was designed, there isn't very good access. So, and the other reason is that we just didn't want to bond as much because we didn't want to be carrying more cash, because that's been an issue in the past, and our goal is to try to reduce our bond cash balances. And we're also seeing the benefits of having released as much TIF as we did. And I would envision there will be more TIF release in the next few years. Just at the last Board of Adjustment, we approved millions of dollars worth of new zoning permits, and so there'll be additional valuation coming on, and so we'll have more to release.
That's exciting.
So our total cash and investments at the end of December was 18 million, with about 5 or 6 million not at our bank, not at Northwestern Bank.
At the end of when?
December.
December.
Mhm.
Right, but we have some of that allocated, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was that, Todd?
I just said, but some of that is spoken for, right? I got $1 million worth of lift station projects going on right now. I got $1 million going on at Crossroads North. We just bid $750,000 worth today for Rainbow Drive, and we just awarded, at the last council meeting, $800,000 worth of projects, or $1 million or something.
$1 million for the aerial truck.
Yeah. So I've probably got $4 million in projects going on right
So you're afraid we maybe would re-spend that or something? Or?
now. No, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood how much stuff is currently in the works and how much of that cash is allocated already.
It's good reminders. Thanks.
Where you get excited.
Are we good to move on? Do expenses yet?
Can you do it in 7 minutes and effectively?
Probably not effectively, but we could probably find a decent stopping point.
but I can't keep up, so.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if it goes any faster than you did over revenue, I would not be able to keep up. So. My finger was doing this.
We won't try and get
Mouse
through it,
house.
but we'll at least start, okay? Okay, so first you have your.
Hang on just a second, let me get it up.
Oh, sorry.
Make sure that I've got it in front of me before.
See, now
you-
you're stealing my thunder here. So.
Sorry, go ahead. All right, go ahead.
Okay, police expenses, not a whole lot of big changes, you know, some increases. He's got some maintenance contracts that have gotten a little spendy, so there's some increases in those things. A little bit for the K-9, moving on to page 2, about the middle of the page, that miscellaneous commodities, that actually is the shop with cop line item. You'll see that for police and fire this year, we have budgeted their capital items out of their operating budget, so that's at $47,000 for his laptops and things that he talked about. And then we're supplementing those with a transfer in from lost. EMA, there's the wage increase that Wayne talked about. Moving on to page 3, you've got the fire has a small increase, a little increase in their wages that Brad talked about. Some different operational increases just for, you know, the life that we live in right now, I guess I'd say. On to page 4. There again, you'll see that we budgeted their capital items out of that fund, and it'll be a transfer in from loss to cover that. Their maintenance contracts went up too a little bit. Then you have ambulance, as Kristen talked about, that is half of a full-time employee, coming out of that wage there. She did lower some areas and increase others, try and keep the budget pretty good. Contractual fees, that is what we pay PCC to do our billing. They're just doing a lot more of it, so we had to increase that. Page 6 is Scott's secretary, that's what that area is, the miscellaneous protection, the street lighting, rec is there. The wages for part-time have increased. I think they're doing something a little bit different with some coaches, so that's the reason for that. Page 7, not a lot's changed. Just some things were lowered, not really much change there at all. Moving on to page 8, there's the cemetery budget. They do have $15,000 in capital improvements for shed improvements. That mower is in the current fiscal year, a little note there that says mower. The wage, that is only half of our full-time cemetery section. The rest of his wage is paid out of water. Page 9 is pool budget. Not a lot of changes there. They did increase some of their electric and not much different. On to page 10 is your pavilion. They've increased their part-time wages for due to Trish's explanation. Increased some of their allowances, not really uniforms, but it's linens, napkins, things like that. They have some other different increases here, but they tried to submit a pretty balanced budget. On to page 11. That's the pavilion yet. Then we've got the fireworks display. That's just a pass-through with the village. On to page 12. Economic development, that's his wage there. We've got planning and zoning, that's I think a fee that we pay to Northwest Iowa Planning and Development. Council wages, mayor wages. You see the increase here on the general finance wages, that is to cover the other half of the full-time employee, that would be the zoning officer part, or the zoning compliance person half, okay. page 13. That 4,000 is for elections, should we have to have one. Legal fees, that's MICA, that's what we pay MICA for general fund things. Then we've got the community building, a repair and maintenance to our building and structure. We're having to replace more heat pumps and do some more upkeep to the building. You know, our building is 1998? Yeah, 20, yeah. Yeah, maintenance, yeah, so it's a remodel, so it's just taking more. Plus, we had some major problems with our elevator recently, so we may have to probably think about replacing that sometime. Let's see, on to page 14. Audit expense, I used the most expensive proposal that we got for the next fiscal year, not knowing how that's gonna end up. Down here to the maintenance contract, the 14,000. That is, part of that is our copier contract, and you will see I am asking to replace our 2 copiers because they are about 10 years old and they can't find parts for them anymore. So if we get 2 new copiers and you approve that in the budget, then the maintenance contract will actually go down. Not by what copiers cost, but it'll go down, all right? So then,
Angie,
yeah, I know.
have you seen copier use go down over the past?
What?
Have you seen the use of copier go down over the past couple of years? Or let's just say since Sam arrived?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, but I mean, we do scan a lot more, but our copiers don't have, I actually met with a person from Access Systems today, and the copiers that they have now are more about, like, instead of scanning to yourself and then forwarding, they just have way more capabilities of storing things and not having to print things quite as much. So I'm looking forward to that. And the cost per print would be cheaper.
And you don't have to get into any detail here or not, but have we looked at going more paperless for billings and stuff like that from the city?
So we offer for everyone to have their bill e-billed. Not very many people take advantage of it.
Add me to that list, please.
The list of people that...
No, add me to the list. Send me
I'll get
electronic.
you a form.
Okay.
All right.
Don't print me one. Send me an electronic form.
Yeah, but don't try and jump the line here.
You can access it at sheldoniowa.com. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just wondering if we should promote that a little bit more.
Okay. Sure.
It's just becoming so common practice everywhere else in our lives.
It is, yeah.
We should take advantage of it if it is an advantage for us. So.
Sure. All right, and then maybe to round out tonight, here, the bottom one, that capital equipment, that is where I'm asking for a third of 2 copiers. We'd like to replace the refrigerator in our office and $10,000 in energy efficient upgrades to our building. We'd like to put in motion light switches in several areas where we find a lot of lights get left on in the building. We also just went to order light bulbs, and some light bulbs had gone up by about $4. So some of our light fixtures may need to be switched out and changed. And then the transfer out to the Civic Center tax. And I think maybe that's a good stopping point. We got through the general fund.
Do we have anything running on LED lights right now?
In this building?
Right.
I don't believe so.
I got a quote once, Wayne, to swap the whole building, and then after I fell out of my chair, I decided not now.
Sure.
That's been a few years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta get more than one price, because you'll save the cost.
In time, the quote I got, I don't think was very valid. I don't disagree with you, Brad, but we need to take a better look.
Yeah, because you will see sizable savings.
Well, it's a start. 10,000
Yep.
is a start. You guys
Yep,
will
it
allow it for us, so. Yeah.
Any questions? If Now we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Roll call.
Kent.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Hamel. Snyder.
All right.